Well, I was involved in basically the last surviving psychedelic research program, which was at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center. This was the time when LSD was making headlines. Everybody was interested in it. So they approached me if I would, write a book or two. And so I got a contract with Viking Press. I had money for a year. And I went to a party in New York City, the Schwartzes. Bob Schwartz was also somebody who was very much around SLN. And Michael Murphy was at the party, and he said, "So what are you doing these days, Stan?" I said, "Well, actually I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm going to write a book." And Michael said, "Why don't you come to SLN? You know, SLN is a beautiful place to write a book." I said, "We'll give you some accommodation, and you can do some workshops for us, and we're going to be a trade-off." So he came here in 1973. This house on Buck Creek was available because Ida Rolf moved out. So we had this, beautiful house on the ocean, and this incredible deal with SLN, trading the room and board for workshops. But initially, people were not very happy when I was talking about the research that we have done. They said, "Well, it's great to hear about these fantastic experiences, but can't we do something? Do you have a little stash on the side? Can't we have the experiences?" I said, I don't have the license here for that, and I don't think SLN would be very happy. And so I started thinking about, what could we do experientially? And I remember that in some of the sessions, the early sessions, when my patients felt unfinished, the drug was wearing off, and it was not a good closure of the experiences. A couple of them asked me to do some physical intervention. And so I saw that we can do things to get better integration of psychedelic sessions. So I started doing it routinely, and then it happened that in several patients, this body work triggered fast breathing, kind of what's called saccadic breathing. And then they told me that the faster breathing took them back into the session. The drug was already worn off, but the breathing suddenly brought them, they were like in the middle of the session again. So I saw that faster breathing can somehow bring material out of the unconscious to consciousness. Well, initially we were working such that the group was lying with the heads toward the center, and they were kind of holding hands, and we let them breathe faster, and we were playing the music. And then there was always somebody, sometimes more than one, close to the experience. And then something amazing happened. We had this Buck Creek house, where there was probably a quarter of an acre or more of, it was like poison oak and birds and stuff. And we wanted to have a garden, so we created terraces, and we were growing veggies there. And so I was working in the garden quite a bit. And at one point I was creating terraces, and I was lifting a beam, and I threw off my back to the point that I was in agony. We had a king-sized bed, and I was on one side, Christina on the other. And when she moved, it was like getting a dagger. And we had a group of 46 people, and as you know, people come here from Australia or Europe or South America. So we promised the breathwork, and so this, what are we going to do? I can't come close to somebody and do body work, It's just like, because it rattles you go with the process. And so what do we do? And then after a while we said, well, why don't we pair them up and just tell them what to do and just supervise it. And so we did that, and the session was such a success that we never did it differently. Not only now, most of the people in the half of the group had pretty significant experiences, but the sitters told us how much they got out of it, what a privilege it was to be there with another person in such intimate process, and so on. And so this was suddenly you know, a whole other new form of it that we just continue until today. And the groups, you know, grew from the 36 that we had, the maximum that we could accommodate here, to we had 460 people in Moscow breathing. And for me, it was an incredible blessing. I mean, I came from Johns Hopkins, seven years at the university, and we had every Wednesday we had a seminar when they invited like the stars of the, you know, of the time, the cutting edge, what they thought was, which was mostly like a new antidepressant or some new tranquilizer. So it was boring as compared to what was happening here. This was really the cutting edge at that time. And I had this really privileged position where I could decide what the topic of the month long, and then who were the people, you know, whom I would like to spend some time and learn from. And everybody wanted to come to Esalen. Esalen, you know, was a beautiful place, and so people were very, very excited to come here. You have in the Esalen office, you have the old catalogs, so you can see the lineups. I mean, the guest faculty is unbelievable, you know. There was Joseph Campbell was in most of them, Houston Smith, you know, Fritjof Capra, Rupert Sheldrake. There were a lot of yogis, shamans, you know, Tibetan teachers and so on. Quite an amazing lineup. I don't think any university has that kind of a faculty, you know. Well, Gregory Bateson was here. He was diagnosed with a cancer that was a big tumor, they said, of the size of the grapefruit sitting on vena cava, and they gave him 4 weeks. And again, he met Michael, and Michael said, Gregory, if you're dying, why don't you come to Esalen? Esalen is a great place to die. So he came, and then everybody who had any healing sort of ambitions, you know, descended on him. So there were anybody from, you know, acupuncturists to Filipino psychic healers and so on. And he lived 2.5 years. So I had this great privilege to be in close contact, daily contact with Gregory Bateson, you know. Really pleasure for me to go down memory lane, you know, to remember those times. Those are really highlights of my life.